Okay, so after my review of Amazing Spider-Man 2, a lot of people had certain problems, some questions about the film. Many critics who I've seen review the film, who criticized the film, had the same questions, and I don't think they paid that much attention or seen it enough times to get the answers they are looking for. So in this video, I'm going to take 5 questions that I most commonly hear amongst other critics and fans, and I'm going to try to answer these questions for you, and hopefully this will give you a better outlook on the overall film. So let's get to the first question. The most common complaint I hear about this movie from other critics and fans is that the tone of this film is all wrong. It's all over the place. It's like a checkerboard. And I would have to disagree with you 100%. And here's why. If you have ever read a Spider-Man comic before, the tone in that comic is totally inconsistent throughout the book. You have your funny parts, you have your dramatic parts, you have your action parts, you have your drama parts. And this movie did a good job of trying to fit all that into one film. You have your dramatic parts, you have your action with the villains, you have your sensitive drama, saddened times with Gwen and Peter. You have all the comedy that Peter Parker is that was missing from the original Sam Raimi film. That's one thing that differs this series from the Sam Raimi films, is the fact that the Sam Raimi films was not funny. And when they tried to be funny, when Spider-Man tried to have humor in his jokes, it just came off as cheesy and corny. Where Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker, is actually very funny, and he plays the role of Spider-Man very well. A lot of people say that this is inconsistent. That how can you in one scene be joking around in the back of an armored car, and then the next scene have a real dramatic scene with Gwen Stacy? But the fact is, that is Spider-Man. If you haven't read a Spider-Man comic, then this is probably why you're baffled by it. You can read a Spider-Man comic and on one page have a very, very funny scene with J. Jonah Jameson and Peter Parker, and then turn to the next page and you have a very dramatic scene. It happens all the time. And the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon series did a really good job of this. You had the funny parts and you had dramatic parts in that series. And they try to take all that and fit in a movie. It wasn't that the tone was different throughout the movie. They're just doing it as they do in the comic. That's the character of Spider-Man. And if you don't get that, then you aren't familiar with that character. How did Harry Osborn learn how to control the glider in such a short amount of time? Okay, so this is a question that everybody's kind of nitpicking about, how he automatically turns into the Goblin, and within a 5-second span, he automatically controlled the glider. And the answer is very simple. If you pay attention to the movie, Harry Osborn has this thing on his arm that's remote controlled. Plus, he has these 2 antennas on the side. Okay, guys, that's not just for decoration, okay? The antennas actually, it helps his brain function the glider. It's whatever he thinks the glider does. Okay, it's actually remote controlled by his brain waves. Whatever he thinks, that's what the glider does. Okay, a lot of people are like, well, that's just for show. No, it's not just for show. They wouldn't just stick something on there for show. When people come and they develop a movie, when they're writing a script, they have to have a logical reason of how things are done. And that is how this is done. It isn't like he just goes in there and within 5 seconds he knows how to build it. Okay? He is in fact controlling it with his mind. And if you watch the film again and look at the picture, you will notice that he does in fact have the antennas on the side, which is connected to his head, that lets him control the glider through his brainwave. How did Electro get his suit? Okay, this is a very, very simple thing, yet everybody has to say something about it just because they want to try to bash the movie, so they pick out any little things to try to criticize the film. Like, how can Harry control his glider? Where did Electro get his suit? He breaks out, he just gets a suit. Well, actually, if you watch the scene where Electro is being interrogated and he's strapped up to the electric bed by the pool, you will see that all the security guards within that area all have those suits. It's actually an electric-proof suit that protects them against electricity. So that's why when Jamie Foxx puts on that suit, it actually helps him from allowing his electricity to get too far out of hand of his own reach. You saw that problem happen when he went into Times Square in the middle of the movie. He was just him, and his electricity was going everywhere, haywire. But by switching to that suit toward the end of the movie, it allowed him to keep his powers in check. We see this also in the Spectacular Spider-Man TV series, where Electro has that suit that lets him keep his powers at bay. So, a very small thing, but if you watch it again, you will notice that a lot of the guards in that actual interrogation area are wearing those exact suits. The Rhino was worthless. Okay, I will not sit there and say the Rhino was completely worthless. I say that the Rhino did exactly what the Rhino was supposed to do. If you read the comics, if you watched the cartoons, if you played the video games, you know that the Rhino is just a throwaway character, okay? The Rhino is never this huge threat that you have to worry about. He is a throwaway character. And basically that's what happened in this movie. The movie starts off where Peter Parker is taking out the character who will be the Rhino, okay? And he humiliates him, which mostly happens to the Rhino. The Rhino gets humiliated. So at the end, when they decide they want to go with the Sinister Six, they bust out the guy who's going to be the Rhino. And he goes on to Times Square, and he's doing all the "I'm the Rhino" and very comedy act, and Spider-Man takes him out, or looks like he's getting ready to take him out. That is what the Rhino is in the comics, okay? You're never going to see a 12-issue story arc where the Rhino is threatening to take out over the entire world. It's not going to happen. The Rhino is a filler comedy relief character. He's been that way in the cartoons, the comics, the video games, since the beginning of time, and that's the way they made him in this movie. If you thought you were going to get the Rhino, and you thought he was going to be a very fierce adversary to Peter Parker, then you obviously never read the comics, don't have that much knowledge in the Spider-Man universe, and you were sadly mistaken, because that's not what the Rhino is. Actually, the Rhino parts in this movie made me laugh because it felt so much like the Rhino. Also, the Rhino is such a throwaway character that in Invincible, a story written by Robert Kirkman over at Image Comics, he made a character called the Elephant who mocks the Rhino and is constantly getting beat up in like a one-panel page or one panel per page type of deal, which he mocks the Rhino because that's the kind of character that the Rhino is. So the Rhino wasn't a throwaway character. His purpose actually, served to the story. He was comedic relief, and he's also helped setting up for the Sinister Six. Now, the last question I'm going to get into is the relationship between Green Goblin, Harry Osborn, Gwen Stacy, and Spider-Man. A lot of people are saying that it felt too rushed, there was no development, and it didn't seem right that it was Harry who just threw her to her death, and there was no build-up. Another critic that I watched, I'm not going to mention name, criticized the fact that in the comics there was a huge history between Norman and Peter, and when Norman did that to Gwen, it was like the worst thing he could possibly done. It was the last straw, it was the final thing that he could have done. And I totally disagree because he's right in that aspect. In the comics, it worked. But in the movie, it also works because throughout the movie, we are getting the story of Harry Osborn and his struggle to live, his struggle to survive. And we see how his best friend Peter wants to help him, but he can't help him in the way Harry wants. But Harry don't understand that. And he thinks that Spider-Man turned him down. So his hatred for Spider-Man overwhelms him, and him and Electro plan to take Spider-Man out. But at the end of the film, when Goblin comes down and he looks at Spider-Man, he double takes twice and looks at Gwen, he puts two and two together and goes, "This is Peter Parker." And when he finds out that it was actually his best friend that said no and not some other person named Spider-Man, the anger overwhelms him. He goes mad and he goes insanely outraged, and he does the one thing that he knew would hurt Peter, and that was to take away his hope, which was Gwen, and threw her, through the clock tower. I thought the whole scene was well done. I thought the entire plot and pace of this movie was well done, and I thought that we got enough Easter egg and fan service that any Spider-Man fan would just enjoy this film to death. But those are the 5 questions that I most commonly hear people ask, and I hope that I answered those to the best of my ability, and I hope that everybody enjoyed it and kind of got a different aspect of the film. Now, if you guys still have more questions and you need me to answer it, go ahead and personal message me on YouTube or put it in the comment box, and I might do another one of these videos where I answer another 5 questions that you guys just don't understand and you just want to hear my input on it. So I hope this video was very knowledgeable for you guys, and I hope you guys watch the film again, enjoy it a little bit more. Until next time, guys, I'm Storm Zing, and that's my opinion.